next segment, our last segment, which Kanika, I am going to have you come off mute and share your stories and how you have been affected by racism, in America, because I know you've been in a couple of different states in America, so
Right. Hello, everyone. And thank you, Bashanti, for even thinking of me. Like you said, we've stayed in touch over the years, but who would even think that we would be here today? So thanks for a simple Facebook post. Like you said, when I wrote it, had no idea would lead to today's conversation, yes. Right? So I was just venting, Facebook venting. And she said, aha, you the person for this conversation?
That's a powerful vent, right? Right. Powerful vent.
So I have a couple of examples that I want to talk through today and just share with everyone about systemic and institutional racism. One is, they're both personal, but one speaks to the conversation Bashanti and I had, and she's known about the situation, but it was years ago, and she's like, wow, I didn't know the full details about it. So I had an older brother, Leroy McKinney Jr., who was diagnosed with bipolar disorder in his late 20s. And so he was able to, if we fast forward, commit, or I would like to say complete suicide while in jail. So he was Sandra Bland before the Sandra Bland situation happened. It was actually 2 years prior to Sandra Bland, almost to the day and month. It was in July of 2013. So our family we don't have the full details. So it was during a period he was in a depressive mood. So I don't know if many know about bipolar. I'm no doctor, but just to kind of give you layman's terms, bipolar, it has two sides to it, right? That's why they say it's polarized. So you can be manic, which is like you're high, you're energetic, or you could be depressive, in the layman's terms to put it shortly. Well, he was in a depressive state. And he went to visit my parents, and it ended abruptly, and he was driving back. So he was visiting them in Michigan. He was driving back to where he resided in Wyoming. And somewhere along the way, his car broke down. It ended in him being arrested. So we still, again, don't have the full details. So we located him in jail after, I'm kind of, paraphrasing and shortening the story. We located him after a couple of weeks. We realized where he was. We immediately contacted them and let them know he has been diagnosed with a mental illness. We never got a call, never from him or anyone else stating that he was there. We literally were filing a missing persons report. That's how we located him. And so instantly we said, hey, you don't have to take our word for it. We understand that the police, feel like people will lie to, protect their loved ones and things of that sort. So we said, hey, we have the psychiatrist can forward you, documentation, whatever you need legally to know that he is mentally
to support what impaired. We're telling you.
Right. And so the sheriff at the time, and this occurred in Iowa, I can't say the name of the county for legal reasons, but it was a small county jail in Iowa, and you can look it up. So my sister emailed them. She said, hey, we can give you this documentation. So he printed off her email, went to my brother and said, hey, your family's telling me you're mentally impaired. You have a mental health disorder. Is this true? And my brother said, yes, it is. And we even informed them that he had previously attempted suicide some years prior to this. So having said all of that, why was he allowed to tear up a bed sheet and hang himself in a small county jail? On any given day, it's a maximum of 60 inmates, and it was nowhere near that at the time. And where he was, because my sister and I drove there after we laid him to rest and everything. We drove to get his belongings. So I said, my brother was very tall and he was handsome, but he was over like 6'5". So I said, when we pulled up, the jail was very small. So I said, I want to see the cell that this occurred in, because I'm thinking, okay, he's lengthy, and this jail looks pretty small.
Pretty small.
And so I said, I want to see the cell that this occurred in. So they showed us. So it was like 3 cells in a row. And he actually had an altercation with a white inmate that referred to him as the N-word. So he was in a separate cell by himself. But it was 3 cells together. And then there was one long one that I guess was like the community cell. It had like the TV or whatever. So I said, my first question, I said, why didn't anyone else call out? Why, you know, I said there were other inmates here in the cell. So why wouldn't they yell out, hey, help, someone, you know, this is occurring? I didn't understand that. And then I said, you know, come to find out there was a recording of the incident. So I said, I want to see the room where the monitors are. So we saw the room that had, you know, the cameras and the monitors. I said, well, where was the person that should have been monitoring? Right. Where were they? Okay. So then I asked the sheriff, I said, is this the only death that you've had in this jail? And he says, yes. I said, okay. I said, was my brother the only Black inmate? I mean, if you could have seen his face, his reaction, it made him uncomfortable. And he started stumbling over his words and stuff. And I said, was he the only Black inmate? And he says, well, yeah, but this has nothing to do with race. And I'm thinking, how could it not? We're in the middle of Iowa. Mm-hmm. He's the only Black inmate. You're small. And I've mentioned that to say, you didn't even have 60 people to monitor. So why was this difficult? Did you not know
what was going on?
Right. Exactly. And to think, you know, that it was recorded and, you know, someone didn't do their job. So our family did pursue them legally, which was a whole nother situation. So that's another way that we kind of experienced racism, because it became less about my brother at that point, and then even more about us. Kanika, where do you work? Where did you get your degree? It was like they wanted to. Oh, wow. I mean, not just me, but
turn the cameras on you.
Yes, they were trying to place value on him as a Black man by his family. So it was like, oh, well, where'd your dad work? Where'd your mom work? Well, and it was like, this is not fitting to the situation. You know, we aren't the inmates. We're not on trial per se, you know. So it was even a nurse that you know, stepped up and said, my brother told her he was having suicidal thoughts before this occurred, like a day or two. So, you know, just everything I've told you just now, I'm like, okay, this is a train wreck. Like, where were the preventative measures? And they weren't there simply because he wasn't valuable to them. His life had no value to them as a Black man. Right. They had no Black staff. They had, you know, they didn't care. And as late as this is what really will blow your mind. Last week, I got a message on Facebook from someone I didn't know. We weren't friends. And it just simply said, I knew your brother, call me. And so I was like, okay, I don't know this person. It was a white woman. So I kind of looked at her profile and I realized she lived in the county that this occurred in. So of course I, you know, hurried up and called her. And so I told my sister, I said, do you think I should contact her? And she's kind of like, you know, let lying dogs lie, but I couldn't, you know, I called her and she was someone that worked there. And so she said, you know, during the legal, you know, proceedings, they were told they could not contact us. So she no longer works there. So she wanted to reach out 7 years later. So you knew it was eating away at her.
I was going to say, she wasn't resting easy and she had to do that.
Yep. Exactly. 7 years later. And so we had a conversation for about 30 minutes. And I said, you know, I've had to see the impact this has had over the 7 years on our family. Yes. You know, mainly my mother, you know, because of your neglect, because purely that's what it was, neglect. And she said, every time I interacted with your brother, he was polite, he was intelligent, he shouldn't have been in jail. I mean, she said this to me. And I'm thinking,
because of everything that was going on, I'm sure now, you know, and not to cut you off, but just to speak to that matter of what's going on in the world. And because so many stories, your brother was a story that was not known, but because of who you all are, you were not going to just sit and let this be swept under the rug. So I want to say,
Right.
first of all, that I am sorry that you had to suffer, this loss of your brother. Like you said, I know from the post and everything that you shared, he was loving and kind. Bipolar is a disease that affects many of us, mental illness as our people of color. So I want to just say, to you all, even as you are still dealing with this years later, that I want to commend you for your courage today to share your story, and being strong here. And for your mom, even though she's present on the phone listening, just for her coming in. So I pray, continue peace and strength and justice for your brother, for your family, because what we're saying and what you're sharing, it's real, right? I'm getting chills, even as Jonathan was speaking, even as Anlita, you all have different stories, but the same impact. How does this make us feel? And I'll let you get back to finishing, but that lady, she couldn't sit any longer because she would then be, she's already, I would say, accessory to it, but because she was employed, and I'm sure she was afraid if she would lose her job, don't know what happened if she left on her own or what. But that's a stress that can kill you because
she had to look her up on Facebook, and
she did. I was just, yep. I was just gonna say she had to find you. That's like somebody looking for their family member. So she had to get a piece. So what was the rest of the story, Kanika?
So and I mean it. That is kind of the end of it, but just the process, just the neglect, he was loved, he was supported. So for them not to value him, to allow that to happen. And I even asked her in that conversation, I said, did someone do something to my brother? And she said no, but she does believe that they were negligent. She's like, I don't believe he should have been there. He should have been somewhere where he could be getting mental health assistance. She said, and he was very kind, she's like that. He shouldn't have been there, and it should have been other steps taken. I've even talked to people, honestly, that have been incarcerated, and they said, if you are suicidal, you shouldn't have anything in your cell that you can harm yourself with. They said, shoestrings, eating utensils, bed sheets, whatever, they don't have access to that because, to keep them from hurting themselves. So it was a clear case of, them just not doing their jobs. And I post that you saw. So my personal situation, and I'll wrap this up. I know we're running low on time.
No, you're good. You got 2 more minutes.
Okay. So Vashanti mentioned I was just recently married. So my husband and I we hired a fireworks vendor. And so we paid this man $2,000, 10 months in advance ahead of our wedding. And he did not perform his services. So of course we took him to court for our $2,000. Well, the post that Vashanti referred to, so even in the judicial system, we had some issues. So initially our court case was scheduled. He requested to have it rescheduled because he was having surgery. Okay. Didn't have to provide any documentation or anything. So I said, okay, whatever. So we then come to our next scheduled court date. He missed it. The judge ruled in my favor because of he didn't show up, and the evidence that my attorney presented. They said, okay, we're putting a $3,100 judgment against him. Thought we were done. Come back. He contacted the court and said, oh, I forgot. I'm sorry. I missed it. We need to come back to court. And I had to vent about that because I said, as a Black woman, I feel like I wouldn't have been given that same luxury. And they did. They reversed the judgment and rescheduled a third hearing for this man. And if you understand this county in Texas, it is a Trump supporting area. Mm-hmm. It is, it's not heavily populated with people of color. And he's white, the vendor was white. And I just couldn't believe, I said, if you did a ruling, how can it just be reversed that easily? And now we have to come back to court.
Right.
You know,
Where they do that at?
right. And I think, as Black people, court is serious. You be on time, you put on your church Sunday clothes,
Yes.
you look the part, and so
Have your paperwork ready.
Right.
Yes, I'm here.
I was like, how
right.
do you get to, you were the person that requested it to be rescheduled. So how do you miss that? How do you do that? But yeah,
but because of the privilege, right? The privilege.
Yes.
He was privileged enough because of his skin color to then have everything reversed. So he thought to try to avoid, yet and all, it still end up working in your favor, right?
Right. And then even when we finally, appeared in court, he's like, oh, I didn't have enough time to view the, the evidence.
Wow.
And my attorney said, well, it was submitted like 3 months ago. So I mean, so he tried to wiggle out of it again, but thank goodness, the judge saw through that and it did end in my favor. But I mean, even with my attorney questioning him and everything, they were like, well, let him speak. Well, it was clear. My husband was just kind of sitting there, like gritting his teeth, like, this is crazy. Like they were just really handling him with kid gloves. It was insane to witness. It really was.
And so, of course, that again, another systemic injustice, the feelings and the emotions that, dealing with, both cases are serious, but a more serious case here because you're trying to figure out the death of, and now on this end, you're trying to figure out, I need my finances back. But not only that, it's still a sense of dignity and pride to say, hey, you're not going to get over on me because of my skin color,
And that's what my husband said. He said he probably thought, we're fairly young, we're Black, we're going to take their money and they're not going to, pursue any legal action. Mm-hmm. And that's very much, how he reacted before I had him served. It was very dismissive, like, oh, I got your money. Go ahead somewhere, little girl,
Right. Like, no. Well, I'm glad that worked out, in that part. And that's, as we heard the many stories, like I'll share with you all, this here, this is a big, I would say, step, right? Because in Lita, we could be on here for more hours, even though, I'm going to give you all something to say in the end. So start thinking of your closing statement after Dr. Barbara speaks, just of what you want people to know just from your story. Because today, what you guys have shared, your courage, your strength, this resilience, and even now just from others listening, I just got a DM just sharing, and I won't say who it is unless they want me to, but just saying that they really enjoyed the show and really enjoyed getting to know the Villarreals and a little bit more about Jonathan's heart. So that's good to know that even in that, to see, hey, this is helping somebody. Okay, the Barbara Evans I have here. Let me just go ahead and read her bio. I want to read her credentials. She is a professional. She has a doctorate of education, specializing in counseling, psychology, and a licensed clinical professional counselor. She is very knowledgeable in her practice and has been practicing for over 22 years, has a thriving business right here in Naperville, 6 years, her own private practice. So she has a little information that she can share on how to cope and deal with it. But also, I love that she specializes in women's emotional health and empowerment too. So Dr. Barbara, the floor is yours. Can you share with us just a little tidbits from what you heard today and how that, we can take this and deal with what we've heard with the negative effects of racism. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all for having me and inviting me to this panel. I have really enjoyed listening to everyone's perspective. This is, no matter how many times we talk about it, this is just such a disheartening topic. It's just, it's one that you just try to do the best you can sometimes, but it always has a way of really getting deep down there in your heart in such a negative way. And I thank you for reaching out to me to try to come up with some type of coping mechanisms and ways that people can share their stories. I always promote therapy. I know that it's been a stigma, especially with Black and Brown people, but this is 2021 and it should really not be a stigma anymore. So that's number one. I promote that is a way that you can really individually, get things off your chest. Say how this really made you feel. Stuff that you can't say to your friends out in the world. You can't say these things to your mother or to the fellas on the basketball court. Mm-hmm. But in therapy, you can. And you can be, I heard Jonathan say, he used the term that I use often, your true authentic self. Part of the problem, if you go to my page on Psychology Today, you hear me talking about finding your voice, finding out your true authentic self. Because the truth of the matter is, we do wear so many hats, not because we want to, but because we have to. Mm-hmm. Okay? And so sometimes you can get lost in all of that. And one day you might wake up and it's like, who am I? Who am I? And so if you don't want to go to therapy, if you don't have insurance, if you don't have the money, then I would suggest, number one, talk to someone you trust. Someone you trust, and then just tell them your story and how it made you feel. You can do journaling. You know, I know someone said that they had wrote a book. Journaling can lead to that, but it is a way to get it out. When we keep all of these feelings bottled up in ourselves, it literally attacks our organs. You've heard of people that they sick, mm-hmm. cancer, all these other deficiencies, and you're trying to figure out where they're coming from. It's because you're keeping all of your angst and anxiety and fears inside, and it's not healthy. It's not healthy. And just think about people. Just think about this. Every single day, I think it's safe to say all of us, when we leave outside our homes, we have the chance, probably 95%, of experiencing some type of act of racism against us, against a family member, or we see someone else engage in this. But every single day, we're not like other cultures who just was, oh, this just happened this week with the Capitol Hill, and they just can't believe it. Mm-hmm. Right? And so I want you to just think about it in terms of trauma. Trauma affects everyone differently. What may affect me may not affect Shanti. Right? And so on. And so another thing I heard that was said on the panel today is that we need someone there to advocate for us. Yes, that is true. But also, you want to learn how to advocate for yourself. You want to learn how to calmly find your voice. Calmly is the key, because most times there's one feeling that resonates with people, and that is what? Anger. Mm-hmm. But when this stuff is coming out, it's coming out because so much has been put in. Right. And when it comes out very strongly or very angrily. And so you want to learn how to calmly find your voice so that you can articulate what's going on, even in times of an emergency, so that people can take you seriously. You don't have to try to give proof. You know, we always have to give proof of what we're saying. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, someone else's word. I think you mentioned the young lady that attacked that 14-year-old boy. If his dad had not been there, who knows? Mm-hmm. Who knows? So these are the things. And I just want to make one other point. I know these are harrowing times, and we don't even really sometimes have a way of dealing with it. But as parents, we must have these conversations with our children. We must have the conversation telling them our story.
That's good.
So that they can be prepared. It's sort of like when you have children, before they leave the house, they're dressed warmly, they eat a good breakfast, they had a good night's sleep, they got their backpacks, they got their pen and pencil, they have everything to prepare them to leave the house to go to school. Right? You need to add this to the list. You need to tell them your story, so they can understand and be able to recognize some racism is so subtle.
Yes.
It's not always just blatant, but you must have these conversations with your kids so that they'll know how to act. Yes, we do have a right. And I'm Jonathan, I'm going to borrow your example again. We do have a right to say to police, why are you pulling me over? You pulling me over because I'm Black? Yes, we do. But there's also a different way you can say that, where you're not antagonizing the police who already thinks you're a gangbanger just because of the skin you're in. So I'm just hoping that, something I've said today can make an impact. I know that it's just, we do have to support each other. Yes. And there are better ways to get our points across and to stand. So
yes. And that's good. As you're saying that, I'm looking at my list like, I didn't share this with you, but okay, you're right on here in my talking points, Dr. Barbara. I mean, really, like you said, we say talk to a therapist, talk to a trusted friend. Those are the things to get it out, and not be silent, because silence, we suffer. But when we talk, we break down barriers. And so in that, just today, sharing our story and sharing the many things, I'm like, whoa, we need another forum, Pam. Like you said, this is just so much that is engulfed in, and I said 10 minutes in the beginning, but originally I'm like, okay, 10 minutes. But then I'm like, we're going to need at least 15 minutes just to kind of, once you start talking, you start going, and even in the fact, as you said, Fabiola, that is a good thing. You said that racism is the virus. We feel the symptoms. We all have survival skills. That is how we survive. And that is so good that you say that. And I'm going to post a link to this article that I read by Logan Patton, because he says in the article, what makes this pandemic so harmful and fatal is that millions refuse to believe that it exists. Millions refuse to acknowledge statistics, facts, and history. Racism, discrimination, and profiling often lives in the mind and cannot be easily seen. However, as Barbara was stating, it's subtle. It's things that happen over time. And as he talks about in this article, that those symptoms that we feel, what is the cure? I mean, what is this cure to this virus? We can find a cure to corona. We can find a cure to AIDS, or they're looking for one for cancer. But the cure to what we need for this racism, we're at 244 years now that we have been dealing with this. When do we finally say, hey, is 2021 the year? And I believe that each year we're getting closer as, layers are starting to be unpeeled. Forums like this, conversations that we're having in our trusted circle, people like Anlita, who is an advocate and an activist, Jonathan, who will soon be an advocate, sharing his voice, and even with Kanika and her story, taking a stand for her brother and say, hey, I know who my brother was. I know that his legacy will yet live on. They won't make him feel this way. It's our voices that matter. Yeah. It's our voices that matter. And so today, as we have all listened, Dr. Barbara, you definitely gave some good points. You have the information for the suicide hotline as well. So if someone is listening in and they do feel that they need a trusted source, mental issues, I tell people therapy is coffee for me. It's Jesus, coffee, and therapy in that order. And I'm good, because we all have to get it out. So whether therapy is, from my therapist, from this computer, or if I am giving therapy where I'm sharing my story as a sense of release to let it go, but I'm not venting. We can vent, but we have to have a healthy vent. And that's what I think matters. And so in closing, I'm going to go around just from the beginning of our order, just to share one final thing, wrap it up in 45 seconds or less, guys. What you want people to know today from your story, Jonathan and Claudia. What is it that you want people to know from what you shared today about how or why they should tell their story?
Just overall awareness, and to kind of get your story out there. And it just builds awareness, but there's always going to be a positive takeaway from this. When we start to share stories like this, people can start to, it lets people in on your life, and it lets them know, because I have started in the military too, it lets people know, like, oh, I didn't know I was offending you. I didn't know that this was coming off this way. So it kind of causes people to do internal searching. Once you share your story, let them know, like, there's nothing wrong. Hey, this offended me. Oh, I'm sorry. Because people actually truly care about you, work colleagues, they don't know they offend you. They want to correct themselves. So hopefully this kind of leads to that positive dialogue, like you said.
That's good. Thank you for sharing. I like that. And Lita, yes, what would you like to share?
Okay, we're gonna try this again. For me, I believe in setting things in spaces and letting them be and dealing with them as they are. So when you share your story, when you speak up, and I use the hashtag speak up, speak out, eracism, the whole nine, I'm an open book. And it's not just healing for me, it's healing for others. And as John said, it's educational for others. I'm sure in that moment where I responded the way I responded, the person who hurt me, I let them know you hurt me. There's no question about it. So anytime that you're speaking up about these matters, having these, I call them courageous conversations, anytime you're doing that, you're opening up the door for change. And it may not be immediate change. Sometimes people need time to process. I'm real big on that. So it may not be immediate, but you may have an impact, a ripple effect somewhere down the road.
Amen. That's good. That is good. I love it. Courageous conversations. That's good. Yes. Thank you. And Kanika, what would you like to share?
I would definitely say share your story. Don't be too embarrassed. Like with our situation, there is a lot of stigma attached. So don't be embarrassed, because one, you never know who you can help, who sharing your story will help. I say advocate for yourself and your loved ones, whether that's, with doctors, because we also know there is an inequity in healthcare as well. So advocate for yourself there. And just, don't take it easy. Don't, fight. You have a right to fight. We could have just, accepted what happened to my brother, but my parents said, no, we're going to fight for ourselves. We want justice, and we're due that, I think.
That's good. And when you said that again, I'm just getting like all types of chills, over it, because it's a lot of resonating, like you said, pretty much like Claudia, even though that I may not have experienced racism on a level as, as deep as some of you all, we've all experienced it. And even when, my oldest daughter was going through, again, mental issues, that was like, whoa, probably about eight years ago. It was like unbeknown to me that all of this was happening and that so many of us suffer. But I'm like, so y'all been suffering in silence, and y'all got me thinking, I was really feeling some type of way as a mother trying to support my child, to realize that a lot of people have been dealing with it, but cover over your head, I never know, right? But once I kind of started to have my trusted circle that I can speak out about, and then people, and in the church, it's kind of like a hush thing. And I'm like, you know what? This is something that is not okay. This is not okay. So to share our voice and to even be able to say, hey, I need to teach you how to advocate for yourself, because you're going to be looked at differently because of your skin color, and then now having to deal with other issues, and I felt for myself with my son, trying to advocate for him, and they were like, oh, we need to do this. I was like, no, you're not going to do this. What, and I was like, my mom could tell you, I was up at night, I'm researching, and I'm like, how are you want to label him this because of this behavior? You have not had to, I was feeling like I need to be on Oprah. You know, so I feel that fight when you feel that you have been wronged and you feel that the system is against you and nobody is looking at you for you, but they're looking at this skin. They're not even trying to hear past you. And it was to the point where the assistant principal, I used to go every day because I was literally at the school every day. He stopped speaking to me. I was like, I know he, you know, and I was like, I had to come back, like you said, and give them the best me as a Christian response would, because, and that person, I know that it's not them, but it's what they have seen. And they knew, oh, she, like Anlita said, oh, she not going to be quiet. No, you told me I could pop up here anytime. Yes, here I am, 9:05 when the school starts. Can I come in? You know, so they wasn't ready for me. So now I'm ready to put on the good fight of whatever that fight is. So together, collectively, whatever our story is, we have to come together. We have to tell our story in a place where we know, again, that our voice is heard. It's not a venting. You know, we can vent, but at the end, like Jonathan said, we're going to leave with positive reactions. So today in closing, Pam, again, I say thank you for your platform, you know, allowing us to come today and just to shed some light on these stories. I believe that with each one, Jonathan and Claudia, with Anlita, with Kanika, that they've been able to share some things that people are probably going, what can I do? What should I do? What's the next step? And then Dr. Barbara giving us tips on how we can cope and how we know, you know, hey, something's not right. I need to go talk to somebody, you know. So sometimes there's after effects that we have experienced. And Lita did not get a chance to get into it. But I know, just like you say, self-care, dealing with this as an educator, you know, she is a recently published author that just published her book about self-care. You know, it goes for a teacher in education, but those are some things that we can make sure that we're taking care of for ourselves, making sure that our mental space, protecting our peace. We've been hearing that since last year, right? Protect your peace. You know, my dad often tells me, be at peace and not in pieces. I said, oh, you quote your favorite friend, huh? Okay, Anyana. But it's so true. We have to be at peace and not in pieces. So, Pam, I'll turn it over to you if you have anything in closing. If not, then we can go ahead and end our segment today.
Well, I think you all have said it all. I, for one, am grateful, and I learned a lot just myself. And all of your stories are important. And I think back, and I know that Alita has said that she loved quotes. Honey, I am a quote queen. Quotes is what I live by. But one of my favorite ones is from James Baldwin. He says that not everything is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. And I thank you all for actually taking the time out and trying to put a face to what's going on in your lives, because I promise you, this is just a symptom of what's going on in others' lives as well.